Welcome to the April 12th meeting of the Penfield Board of Education. This meeting is called back to order at 6:37 p.m. Please rise and the clerk will lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
May I have a motion that the board approve the agenda of April 12th, 2022 as submitted?
So moved. Second.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Just 1 second. May I have a motion and a second that the board approve the consent agenda, including the approval of the minutes from March 12th, 2022 as submitted, the acceptance of the recommendations from the Committee on Special Education, the acceptance of the recommendation from the Committee on Preschool Special Education, the acceptance of the recommendation from the Superintendent for personnel changes with addendum, and the request to approve the bidders provided to you.
So moved. Second.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. May I have a motion and a second that the treasurer's report, including the cash report, the general fund cash report, the general fund revenue status report, the general fund budget status report, the school lunch fund cash report, and school lunch fund revenue and expense budget report for the month ending February 28th, 2022 be approved.
So moved. Second.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Oops, wrong way. Oh, and now we're at special reports. Dr. Putnam.
Great, yeah, so I'll have Mrs. Rice and Ms. Stutt's going to come up as well. That's, oh, perfect, all right, so we'll have, so we have a textbook presentation presented by Kimberly Rice, a Bay Trail ELA teacher, here to do a presentation for a textbook called Posted. So I'll turn it over, and you have a clicker, because I know you've got a couple of slides there.
I'll make you clicker.
Nice job.
Okay, so this is for a new book that we are proposing called Posted. The purpose of this unit is to encourage students to consider shared experiences and how these events impact people differently. Students will consider different perspectives through literary elements to allow them to find commonality in the human experience. The book offered in this unit allows students to explore the voices and perspectives of characters and how their perspectives impact their behavior. The essential questions student will keep coming back to are, how can our personal experiences impact our behavior? How do individual experiences shape the way we see the world, others, and ourselves? And our next slide is kind of the blurb of the book to get the gist. In middle school, words aren't just words. They can be weapons, they can be gifts. The right words can win you friends and make you enemies. They can come back to haunt you. Sometimes they change things forever. When cell phones were banned at Branton Middle School, Frost and his friends, Dee Dee, Wolf, and Bench, come up with a new way to communicate, leaving sticky notes for each other all around the school. It catches on, and soon all the kids in school are leaving notes, though for every kind and friendly one, there's a cutting and cruel one as well. In the middle of this, a new girl named Rose arrives at school and sits at Frost's lunch table. Rose is not like anyone else at Branton Middle School, and it's clear that the close circle of friends Frost has made for himself won't easily hold another. As the sticky note war escalates and the pressure to choose sides mounts, Frost soon realizes that after this year, nothing will ever be the same. And now a wonderful quote from the author. Some words can break you to pieces, but that's not all. Words can be beautiful. They can make you feel things you've never felt before. Gather enough of them, and they can stick those same pieces back together, provided they're the right words said at the right time. But that takes more courage than you think. That's all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Should I
Board
advance the
members.
slide for you?
You can advance the slide if you'd like. Right to superintendent reports, that's next.
So, board members, any questions? No. Good. Thank you. That sounds like a nice way to cover the various topics and strip away the social media, but that's really what it's all about.
I do have one question. So, and just so the board knows, and maybe not everybody does, but Mrs. Rice teaches at Bay Trail. Prior to that, she was at Cobbles, and her kids lovingly were known as rice cakes. So in 6th grade, are they still lovingly known as rice cakes in your class?
They are. They also earn rice cake rewards for good character and good behavior and things.
As two, there are 2 rice cakes in my house, so thank you for everything you've done, supporting
you.
them and at 6th grade as well. And for the community, these books would then, well, one book would be on display at the district office and our Penfield Public Library up until the next board meeting, and people can stop in, take a look at it, leave comments, and then it would come to the board for approval at the next board meeting. Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That concludes special reports.
Special reports. Brings us to student representative reports. Our student representative is Lila Harvey. Ms. Harvey, would you like to give your presentation?
Thank you. So just beginning, of course, spring break is next week, and I know many are excited for only having a 4-day week this week. So at the high school, spring sports are well underway, with boys varsity baseball winning against Fairport last night. Seniors were able to paint their own parking spots over the weekend, which is a new tradition started by the class of 2021. Sophomores had their semi-formal at Shadow Lake a couple of weeks ago. Best Buddies had their fun Easter egg hunt on the turf yesterday. National Honor Society is currently running a new and used shoe drive. And the PHS Ambassadors Club celebrated the assistant principals by decorating their offices as a reminder of how appreciative we are for all they do. The senior variety show was also a success, with acts including an original song, stand-up comedy, and band performances by both teacher and student bands. Sources of Strength peer leaders ran community circles focused on the importance of belonging, acceptance, and identity in both 10th and 11th grade seminars. And tomorrow night at 7:30 p.m. is the Prism concert, which will feature various groups, including choirs and smaller chamber groups. At Bay Trail for April Fool's Day, students and staff participated in a fun student-teacher swap day, where the students dressed like the adults and vice versa. And students raised a total of 600 items for the Penfield Ecumenical Food Shelf through the Cart Madness Challenge. These items were loaded and delivered by the hockey team. At Scribner, a 5th grader in Mrs. Tversky's class was awarded the New York State Attorney General Triple C Award, which is an award given to a student who exemplifies courage, character, and commitment. At Harris Hill, students performed their play Press Start last week, and 1st graders are learning about the relationship between consumers and producers, and are putting their knowledge to use by creating products like popcorn, pencils, bookmarks, and lemonade that they will later buy using Nelson bucks. At Cobbles, students were able to attend a music assembly for the first time in 2 years to listen to a performance from the Creekside Steel Drum Ensemble. And lastly, at Indian Landing, 4th and 5th graders in the art club made Oreo art at their most recent meeting. And Mrs. Diaz's class met illustrator Ryan Kozar and enjoyed asking him questions about his art and what made him want to be an illustrator. Students learned about the U.S. Mint's Special Quarters program that celebrates influential women. In honor of Women's History Month, these students made their own versions of these quarters by honoring women, including Michelle Obama, Annie Sullivan, and Ida B. Wells. These students even got a shout-out from the U.S. Mint's Twitter account. And Student Council organized a Change for Ukraine fundraiser, where student council members collected loose change last weekend. Thank you.
Thank you, Layla. Board members, any questions?
Oh,
Very good, great, thank you.
very busy.
Yeah, so thorough.
Now, which brings us to, waiting for that cue, the superintendent's report. Dr. Putnam.
Ms. Harvey, once again, does such a better job, but at least I have pictures, so you'll notice some similarities. One of these years we're gonna like really fine tune this, so you can just do my report. So because it's great. So again, the Bay Trail Knitting Club made some items for babies over at the Strong Memorial Hospital. The 10 knitters met for 10 weeks and made 32 hats and 4 pairs of booties. It was a great job. So they're so small. It's awesome. So good for them. Ms. Harvey mentioned the Bay Trail Cart Madness, and here's a photo of the 600 items that went to the Penfield food shelf. And shout out again to the Penfield hockey team who helped load all those items and unload them over at the food shelf. That Triple C Award, Natalie Wildenhaus receiving the New York State Attorney General's Triple C Award, and just a great honor. Our StoryWorks Award at Harris Hill, 5th graders Kelly Bobbin and Jordan Rasmussen were named runners-up for the StoryWorks Fiction Writing Contest, and there were hundreds of submissions and only 11 runner-ups were selected, and Kelly and Jordan were the only 2 winners from New York State. Really cool. We just got word that Penfield Central School District has been named to the 2022 list of best communities for music education by the National Association of Music Merchants Foundation. Just kudos to all of our student musicians and our incredible staff working to prepare our students in the world of music. And then also, hot off the press, is a school safety award. Our district was named the winner of the Utica Nationals 2022 School Safety Excellence Award at the titanium level. And this designation is the highest level awarded and recognizes the district's outstanding efforts to create a safer school environment for students, staff, and visitors. So our very own Director of Facilities, George English, did travel to the conference and receive the award. That's a picture of it. It's a very nice plaque that we will be hanging up. And that is for student and staff honors, my update. I will turn to my one slide beyond student and staff updates, which is just a COVID-19 update, which I've been doing now for 2 very long years. So just as a reminder to our community that cases have been on the rise in Monroe County, and the district will continue to provide at-home COVID-19 tests as long as we receive them from the state. They're coming in on a weekly basis. So this week they'll be going back out right before break to families who are interested in testing at home. And just a reminder that our buildings also all have KN95 masks, both child sizes and adult sizes are available for any staff or student who would like one. And just we've been sharing sort of the weekly COVID numbers, and this starts back on March 16th. And you can see that, we really did. January, we hit like record highs, pushing 200 cases in our school, and they really have come down, and they're starting to go back up again. So tomorrow, that you can see those are all Wednesday morning when we post. So the April 12th is today, and as of this meeting, we had 35 active cases. So we're seeing an increase. Just like we're seeing in the news, the folks who are coming down with COVID-19 and our students and our staff, they're mild, but it's still something to be monitoring, and we just encourage parents and guardians and students, if there's an exposure, they can wear a mask, they can definitely home test, they can make sure that they are not coming to school if they have COVID. All of those pre-COVID health rules are in place. If you have a fever, stay home. If you don't feel well, stay home. And just make sure that you're reaching out to the school nurse and letting them know. And then for parents and guardians, we will continue to inform when there is a COVID-19 exposure during the school day, and you'll get an email, a generated email, just letting you know. And that's it for my COVID-19 update. Questions on Superintendent report?
Board members, Catherine.
So I have a comment about the knitting club. I was really pleased when I saw that because I happen to be more of a crocheter, but I can knit as well. And it was a craft or a skill that I was taught when I was very young. And a lot of people don't know how to do it. But the knitting industry and the yarn industry is huge. I mean, billions, so there's a lot of people who do it. But when you talk to people, there's very few people who actually know how to knit and then are proficient at it. So I'm just thrilled. I was thrilled when I read that. Their contribution was great. And I just needed to give it a shout out. I think it's wonderful.
You know, Catherine, I think it's one of those pieces too that is one of the many points of pride in Penfield is like if students have an interest, we will find a way to create a club.
Yep.
And so, like, you know, the knitting club is great with 10 students knitting for 10 weeks to also end with a project that gives back to a local organization, our Strong Hospital and the NICU, and that support is really cool. So.
And there's really never not a need.
Yep.
Because if it's not for that group, there's another group. And then as these knitters get more proficient, there'll be the gifts that they can give and heirlooms that they can create, and it's really quite wonderful. And to your point, couldn't agree more.
It's great.
Any other questions, board members?
I don't have a question, but I have a comment. As a parent, I know our nursing staff is going above and beyond, and I appreciate getting the communication that my kid has been exposed so we can make really informed decisions at home. So I know that's an extra load on our nursing staff, but I really do appreciate that because I feel like as a parent, I'm able to make a really informed decision about what we're doing as a parent to keep things contained or make sure we're not being a reason that it's spreading. So.
Yeah, so I will absolutely second the kudos to our nurses that have gone above and beyond, and really, I think this last 2 years for our nurses is a reminder that when you go into school nursing, it's still nursing, and it's really, they really have to do some very on-the-job things that you don't typically think of, and so appreciate their skill set. And also, I would just let you know that those emails, although they're generated, it is administrators and clerical behind the screens too, making sure that things get sent out. So it really is that team effort. All those things people don't always think about on what it takes to make just an email go out for a student who was exposed and how many kids that is, and making sure that they go out in a timely fashion. So thank you for noting that. All right, so that's my student and staff honors and my one update, and the rest of the superintendent's report, I'll turn it over to Dan Driffel for business updates, and then Leslie Maloney for just an update, instructional update for the next school year.
Thanks, Dr. Putnam. Good evening, board. A couple things from the business office tonight. First being the superintendent's proposed 2022-2023 operating school budget. We have a final expenditure review. I know we've been kind of talking about this for 4 months now, but we'll give one last look at it for the board to then bring forward to our community on May 17th for approval. We'll analyze the New York State legislative budget that passed last week. We'll take a look at early local funding analysis as it relates to our levy and tax rates. We have for approval tonight the property tax report card. Once that is approved by the board, we have to disseminate it to the state and local media within 24 hours of adoption, so we'll be sure to do that tomorrow. And then just next steps in the budget process. We do have one facilities item tonight. It's a consultant contract approval for design services, architecture and engineering as it relates to our 2021 capital project that the community approved back this past December. So we'll start with budget. Here we are in the budget development process. A lot of green on the board as we've been discussing budget for the better part of 6 months now. So we're in the legal requirements phase after the board adopts a budget. So we have published the legal notices to advertise when the vote's going to be, what propositions are going to be on the ballot, and then some of the next steps are the budget hearing, the budget notice being mailed out to the community, and then finally that statewide vote on May 17th. So here once again is the final version of the 22-23 proposed school budget. The all-in number for next year is $109 million, $153,415. So it's a $4.8 million increase in spending over this current 21-22 year, or 4.61%. We don't need to really delve into all of the details because we've done that kind of repeatedly throughout the spring, but the big dollar expenses this year are in our special programs. So that's students with disabilities, that's occupational education, employee benefits is a big number at $1.5 million. Our central services relates to the presentation that we saw from our Director of Facilities, Mr. English, around our operations and maintenance, wages, and then seeing really soaring utility costs, particularly around natural gas, as futures stay stubbornly high, the prices there. And then our teaching and school program, really kind of that bread and butter of what we do here at Penfield. So the other way of looking at the overall budget is by object. Again, pointing out that people make up about 3/4 of the budget there between benefits and personnel costs. Again, the big jump that we're seeing in contractual costs is relating to the utility costs on the operations side of the budget. BOCES costs up close to 5.5%. Equipment and supplies just at 1.7. The big drop off in debt service, which has been planned with prior year planning, and then just a small increase on the interfund transfer side. Now that the school budget is complete and ready for board consideration, we have the 3-part component analysis of the New York State budget. So this looks at the administrative, the programmatic, and the capital requirements of the school budget. And what you can see here is that for the upcoming year, we see capital at about 13.5%, administration at about 10%, and program a little over 76.5%, and how it relates to last year. So the proportion of spending for administration is down about 0.19%. Program is up 0.77%, and capital is down with that associated drop off in debt service there of that 0.6%. And as it relates to dollars, the administrative costs are up $285,000. The programming costs are up about $4.5 million. And then capital pretty even there at that $32,000 increase for next year. We have talked about how the 4.6 spending increase is the largest that we've had in about a dozen years or so. But relative to where we were not so long ago, 12, 15 years ago, it is kind of in line with some of those larger budget increases that we saw during the 2000s. And again, speaking to my colleagues around the county, we are not alone. I saw updated numbers today that this 4.6% increase is actually going to be about average. There are some districts that are around 3. There are some that are up 4, 5, 6, 7% for next year, as everybody is really feeling kind of those inflationary pressures on the school budgets. So on the spending side, just some of my takeaways that I want to leave with the board is that we are seeing expenditure increases everywhere. Material supplies, printers, toner, fuel, utilities, wages, everything seems to be going up. We're controlling everything that we absolutely can. Mrs. Bradstreet and I were discussing some of the savings measures that we've taken in the last couple of years, and it's a solid list. Like, we're really doing what we can to control costs. But at the same time, this budget preserves all the opportunities that we have for our kiddos and our staff. As Dr. Putnam said, if there is a student-led interest in something, we'll figure out a way to harness it and make it happen for them. And then even with that 4.6% increase in spending, the biggest that we've had in about 12 years, as we'll see as we transition to the revenue side of the budget, the spending plan is still well within the parameters of the revenue constraints that we have in place as school districts. So before I jump over to the revenue side of the budget, is there any further discussion on the expenditure side of the budget?
Board members? No? Okay. Continue.
So New York State legislative budget finally came through late last week, late Thursday night into Friday, about a week late from that April 1st deadline. So late budget is better than no budget at all. It did continue that 3-year phase-in of foundation aid that had been promised. It does fully fund those expense-based aids, those BOCES aids, those building aids, those transportation aids. So that's a positive. It does include expansion of UPK funding. We haven't seen the exact details of it, but what it looks like is that it's not an increase in the per pupil allotment, but rather increasing the number of allotments that are available for school districts to try to make it as universal as possible. So we haven't seen exactly what that looks like, but I wanted the board to know that we're keeping a close eye on that as more information comes across. It does institute that one-time tax rebate credit that the governor had proposed in her budget back in January, and I'll discuss what that looks like for our community members in a few moments. The zero emission buses were included in the legislative budget, so what it looks like now is that any new school bus purchased by 2027 needs to be a zero emission electric vehicle, and all have to be on the road by 2035. There are a handful of caveats written into the legislation that allows the Commissioner of Education to delay that. There are protections afforded to school districts to request waivers, to delay it. There are certain studies that are going to be baked in to understand feasibility, cost, and what that looks like as school districts, I guess, begin to start preparing for this reality. Good news is we have plenty of time to kind of figure it out. The other thing that I mentioned at our last meeting is that the Senate One House budget had proposed in this fall having on the referendum a ballot for the Environmental Bond Act, a substantial amount of money that the state voters will have a chance to vote on whether or not to essentially raise debt for purposes of helping to fund this, and amongst other things. So, that's later in November during the actual general election, but it looks like that will be a ballot referendum to help finance some of this. They did push the 1-year waiver for retiree earnings, so that pension cap is excluded to try to help shore up some of the labor shortages that we're seeing in our schools. There were a few changes to tier 5 and 6 for the retirement systems around the amount of years that are vested and the amount, what sort of earnings are they have to report for pension purposes. So like, for instance, for the next 2 years, coaches don't need to pay into the pension system for the earnings on coaching sports. So it's to try to help encourage, the newer employees to join the schools. So it's just kind of like a one-time incentive. Two things that did not get included in the budget that we were hopeful for, that we discussed at our last meeting, was that it did not raise the limit of the capital outlay projects, those mini bidded capital opportunities. It stays at $100,000. So we're not going to pursue that for next year based on that amount. And it did not increase the aidable salaries of the career and technical ed teachers at BOCES, which is unfortunate because we have so many of our kids take advantage of those opportunities. Here's what the legislative budget looks like for Penfield. So what this table shows is in the current year amongst the different New York State aid categories, what we actually received, what the governor had proposed back in her executive budget proposal in January, and then what the legislative budget actually provided. So the big top line number obviously is that continued phase in of foundation aid, as we see a 22% increase there. UPK, as I mentioned, the expansion of those funds. BOCES year over year down a little bit. I still think this is going to be a little bit more for purposes of what we actually receive. So these numbers from the state are as of February. So it really isn't taking into account March, April, May, and June of this year. So I think that'll actually go up a little bit. The excess cost aids are the costs related to students with special services. So that's pretty similar to what we were expecting. That IMA is the instructional material aids. So we actually had an enrollment jump this year. We anticipate a little bit of an enrollment jump next year, so that's why that goes up. Those are dollars afforded to textbooks, software, hardware, and library materials on a per pupil basis. Transportation aid shows is up quite a bit, but I actually think that number will come down as we haven't been spending as much there due to the driver shortage. So we're a little short there. And the building aid is exactly kind of what we're expecting to see, not a lot of change year over year. So a substantial increase in state revenue, 11%, according to the legislative budget. Want to point out that within this phase-in of the foundation aid formula, going back now to that 07-08 year when the formula went into effect, you can start to see the big jumps that we're seeing this year. So in the current year, we got $15.8 million in foundation aid. Next year, projected to get that $19.4 million, still short relative to the formula by $3.5 million. So if the legislature honors their commitment, we would expect next year to bridge that gap and come up to around that $22.9 million figure for next year. So we'll see. We'll see what happens with that. But a positive development without question. So I want to shift focus to local funding. So as we've discussed throughout the spring, our local levy limit, the tax cap formula, afforded us the availability to raise the tax levy up to 3.64%, only requiring a simple majority 50% approval. Our recommendation at the last meeting was to have the levy at 2.12%, so significantly lower than that 3.64% cap. And that's where our levy recommendation remains for purposes of this budget. And again, that's kind of like the first part of how the tax rates shake out. So you have the tax levy determined by the taxing jurisdiction. Then we factor in those town assessments. You factor in those New York State equalization rates, which is kind of their assessment of where the assessments are relative to market value. And that's how we get the tax rates. So we'll jump into tax rates in a second, but I just wanted to show that in the tax cap era, so in this last 10 or 11 years or so, these are the levy increases that Penfield Central has had. So next year, that 2.12% is about average from where we've been the last 11 years, a little under. We've been about 2.2%, including last year's 0% levy there. So kind of, historically where we've always been. So let's start to talk about some of those local impacts. So as we discussed last time, the New York State equalization rates, we have two of our towns doing revaluation, Penfield and Walworth. The other towns are all going down because the theoretical market values of homes have gone up higher than the assessments, so the state comes in and says you're a little underassessed. Because Penfield below is such an outsized portion of our 6 components, that revaluation makes a big impact on our tax rates. So as of today, April 12th, here's what the tax rates would look like based on the preliminary taxable values for all of the towns. So in Penfield, the current year tax rate is 27.1. Next year it would go all the way down to $20.79. So a decrease of $6.31 per $1,000 or 23% year over year. You can see Parenton would go up about $1 per $1,000 of assessed value for almost 5%. Pittsford essentially stays equal year over year. Brighton sees a little bit of a reduction. Macedon, with their reevaluation, sees a big reduction there, and then Walworth also down a little bit. So then if you look at true value, so if all of the 6 towns were equalized at 100% of their market value, what would be the tax rate across all of the 6 component towns? This current year being at $23.04. Next year would be at $20.80, pretty much aligned to that Penfield tax rate. So a big drop there, $2 per thousand of assessed value, or almost 10%, 9.7%. So kudos to the town of Penfield. They have on their website a really nice handy calculator that people can check to see what the associated tax impact could be. Again, this is not final. I've gotten a lot of calls about the revaluation process, a lot of questions about what this means for taxes. Obviously, it'll differ on a per person basis what their household reassessment looks like, but I think what I want to drive home is that just because there's been a revaluation doesn't mean your taxes are going to go up 30%. For a significant amount of people, their tax bill will probably go down. For a significant amount of people, it'll stay very similar to where it was historically, and then for some people, it's probably going to go up based on recent sales trends. So this is just where we are today. The Board of Education does not adopt tax rates until August. These numbers aren't finalized until July. But just so that the board is informed of where we are amongst this revaluation process, here's what things look like today. And that you can see below that $20.80 true value tax rate would be by far the lowest that we've had in a very long time. So the other good news that I want to touch on is that homeowner tax rebate credit that the legislature did adopt. So this is a little bit technical, so stay with me a little bit. So this is a one-time rebate that will be, it'll be a check sent to homeowners this fall. Not exactly sure when, but probably in September or October. It's based on the STAR program projections. So for basic STAR, the projection is $707 exemption or rebate credit. And then within the different qualified income levels, so the 4 there are household income below $75,000, between $75,000 and $150,000, $150,000 to $200,000, and $200,000 to $250,000, there's a factor. So there's a modifier there. So households with income less than $75,000 would get a 163% rebate of that $707 for a projected rebate of over $1,100. And you can see how that looks by the different stratification of income tiers there. If household income is above $250,000, there's no exemption for basic STAR households. If you are on the enhanced STAR, so the senior STAR, so you meet the age and income eligibilities there, that projected normal STAR rebate is $1,658. It would be 66% of that comes in at just under $1,100 there. And again, this is in addition to STAR, so you get your normal STAR rebate or exemption on your bill, and this just comes across as a one-time credit. So even if folks are seeing a school tax increase this year based on the revaluation, this rebate will certainly offset quite a bit of it, if not all of it, for many families. And again, it's just a one-time credit. It's not a multi-year program. The states put it into place because they're pretty flush, so they want to return some money to the taxpayers. So this is one vehicle to do that. So here it is. So we discussed the local levy and we discussed New York State Education Aid. We're seeing a projected increase in county sales tax sharing. So money that we receive from Wayne County and Monroe County up almost 8% for next school year's budget. All other revenue kind of holds steady at that $1.6 million figure. Assigned fund balance comes down even more historically from where we've been. So we've always been sort of around $2 million for assigned fund balance. This current year, we're at that $450,000 level, and then for next year, just all the way down to $240,000. And then once again, no budgeted use of reserves. They're not dipping into fund balance. No need to supplement with interfund transfers either. So all in all, we're seeing spending increases for sure, but based on the increased foundation aid, we're not even having to levy up to our cap. We're significantly below it. So it's a good budget. I'm proud of it. I want to thank a lot of the people that helped me with this budget. So my assistant, Dr. Maloney's office, Mr. English, Mr. Gallo, all of our building principals. This isn't developed in a vacuum. A lot of work goes into it, a lot of conversations, some detailed planning processes. So we're happy with where it is. It'll provide all of the necessary contingencies for next year. Should things continue to go awry with natural gas prices, with fuel costs, it has enough margin of safety built in that we can feel comfortable that next school year will be uninterrupted, pretty much no matter what gets thrown at it. Also for tonight, as I mentioned before, we have to approve the property tax report card. For those that don't know what the property tax report card is, it's included in the board packet. It's public. Has to be submitted to New York State and local media within 24 hours. We're not required to pay the media to post it. We just have to provide it to them for their information, and then they can do what they see fit with it. It reflects budget information and year-end fund balance estimates. It will reflect, as we've discussed, that we're under our levy cap once again. We are projecting a slight increase in enrollment, and the fund balance decrease in reserves is due to the reserve utilization from the capital project that voters approved back in December. We utilized about a little over $20 million of capital reserve money for that project. So next steps for the budget process, we have a Meet the Candidates night scheduled for April 26th. Our required annual budget hearing will take place on May 3rd prior to the board meeting here at Penfield High School. After the budget hearing, by state law, the budget notice is mailed out to the community. It always has to be after the hearing by law, which is sometimes confusing. Sometimes you think you should get the notice before the hearing happens, but it is what it is. And then that statewide budget vote and board election, always the third Tuesday in May, takes place on May 17th this year. So it's here at Penfield High School Gymnasium from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. Absentee ballots are available. If you require one, please contact the board clerk, Sharon Rickfitz. And on the 17th, we just have two propositions for consideration. We have that school operating budget. Again, it's cap compliant, so it only requires that 50% community approval. And we have 3 available board seats, 2 two-year terms and the 1 vacant seat, 1-year term. And with that, any discussion?
Board members, any questions, comments? Barb?
I have a question about the UPK that's in the budget. Is that money allocated for this upcoming school year?
It seems like it can be, yep.
So, would we be then adding spots for Penfield kids? Because I know there's 48 kids on the wait list.
I think we're still unpacking what it means, as Dan said, on how that could work. My short answer would probably be no.
Okay.
Because we need classrooms to put them in. And
Right.
so that would be trying to find another spot available to take students in.
Okay.
But it's something that we would look at. We would love to be able to do that, but we also need to make sure that we have spots to put them.
Well, absolutely.
Yeah, but
Okay.
I would see it as we're really looking at UPK in the work is around that pilot year as we're trying to build, get it
Right,
off the ground.
right.
So it's
Okay.
good news for future too.
Okay. Yes.
Can I ask a follow-up to that? So does that mean we would lose that extra money, or could we save it for a future year? Or do we not know that yet?
Yep, so the way they award UPK funding, it's not a general fund revenue, it comes through as a grant. So it's awarded on a per pupil basis.
Okay.
So it would be available to us in future years, but if we did not utilize it with the extra seats for this year, we wouldn't receive it.
Okay, got it.
Does that make sense?
Okay.
Yes,
Yep.
thank you.
All right.
Do we, at this point in time, know what the potential number of seats this could provide, if we had capacity available?
We don't know the number of seats. I think from what I've seen in proposals in the past, so our allotted seats this year were 116, I think. Typically what they have, advocacy groups have offered is what's the difference between your allotted seats and what's your typical kindergarten class. So probably another 116 seats or so, something like that, to get us to a 330 kind of
Okay.
number.
Wow.
But I have not seen the backup detail of how many slots would be afforded with this funding.
Got it.
A lot of we don't have an answer yet on what we can do with it,
Right.
but it comes down to that capacity piece. Ideally, it would be great to be able to have seats for every student, but as you know, we're utilizing the community partnerships.
Right.
So trying to find seats for kids is important.
Okay. I do have another question on UPK, but it really doesn't have to do with Dan. For New York State, you had to be 5 by December 1st, is that correct? Or 4?
For kindergarten.
4 for UPK. Okay. Is that going to be, is that going to stay that way? Only because I'm thinking there's children who are November birthdays that turn 4 and will be an older 4. And then there's those ones that just turn 4, like November 29th.
Yeah, so Barb, it's a really great question, and families with kiddos who have birthdays right along in there, we've received a lot of questions. And so students need to be 4 for UPK by December 1st. They need to be 5 for kindergarten. And so if families are unsure or have any questions, call Mary Hill at our district office. She is our registrar. Call 249-5700. She can answer the questions.
Okay.
She's been great in making sure that families get pointed in the right directions.
Thanks.
Board members, any other questions?
All right, so we'll shift to Dr. Maloney, who's going to walk through a little bit of our elementary and middle school schedules and some conversations and drafts we've had looking to next year. Just an update for the board and the community.
So, we have been revamping the elementary and the middle school schedules. And as this new senior cabinet team came on board, there was a lot of feedback at both levels regarding the current schedules. And some challenges that we faced as a senior cabinet were related to at each of the levels. Elementary, there was a color rotation, families are probably familiar with. And at Bay Trail, they have had they've had 3 different schedules in 3 years. This will be the 4th different schedule in 4 years. They are currently on a 4-day rotation. In the past, they've been on a 3-day, and I believe last year they were on a 5 or 4 day, and then the high school's on a 5 day. And so that creates a lot of confusion for families. It also, from a district perspective, creates challenges for us to be able to share faculty across levels and across buildings. So as you know, the staffing challenges have increased recently. And so what a goal of ours, or a focus, was to work to get all 6 buildings on the same day rotation. And as we talked as a larger administrative team, we agreed on 5 days. So moving forward, we've designed 5-day schedules for the elementary buildings as well as at the middle school. As the other piece, the feedback from teachers, from families, from really all of the stakeholders is around our students' struggles and challenges with social emotional learning from the pandemic. And the social skills, focusing on those social emotional learning needs. So how could we take our schedule and really look at some changes that could be made to increase that focus on social emotional learning? The other piece with the sub shortages, it's been a challenge to be able, we used to do release days where teachers would get substitutes and be able to do professional development all on the same day. You know, the whole 4th grade team would come together on the same day. And that's really become virtually impossible because of the sub shortage. So taking a look at the schedule, if we were to put all 4 elementaries on the same schedule, then we would be able to have common planning at the grade levels or the special areas, which would allow us to do some job-embedded professional development. So those are our goals, or were our goals moving into this process. So speaking of the process, let me share with you where we've been, where we are, and where we're going. So we gathered feedback from grade level and department teams through their building leadership cabinets. And I met with many of the leadership cabinets to hear from them specifically. The principals also gathered feedback. And then we developed draft schedules in collaboration with the building administrators, taking that feedback and really trying to put it together. We then presented draft schedules to the elementary buildings as well as Bay Trail during their April faculty meetings. And we still have 2 left. Tomorrow is Cobbles and Scribner is on Thursday. When we do the presentation, we share with faculties a survey, and we're very, very encouraging to fill out the survey, share your feedback. There has been some amazing ideas and really great feedback on tweaks that we can make, some things that were never thought of. So we really appreciate the feedback through the surveys. And then the next bullet there, we're making those modifications based on the feedback. The plan after that is to present the modified schedules during the May faculty meetings, and then communicate changes which impact families. So letting families know of the changes that could potentially impact families. So let's break it down and look at the elementary schedule. So we're looking at implementing a daily 30-minute building-wide social emotional learning block. And what would be included in that block? What might happen during that time? So second step instruction is a social emotional learning curriculum. And we implemented initially second step when we went to full day kindergarten. And Tasha's team has been taking a look at the implementation, and I love this. They frame it as a relaunch of second step instruction. And how can we deliver that tier 1 social emotional learning curriculum to students, as well as implementing our community building circles and our restorative practices. The principals are very excited to get back to their school-wide assemblies and be able to have a lot of those school-wide events, school-wide and grade level. And then large group enrichment activities. how could we use this time to be able to offer some of those building-wide and larger group enrichment opportunities? This block also allows for our special areas to have common planning time district-wide. So that's an opportunity for them to be able to collaborate. We're also taking a look at increasing daily instruction of special areas to 1 hour daily. That, by increasing the special area time to 1 hour daily, that allows the grade level teachers to be freed up to have that common planning time, which we could then use for some of that job embedded professional development. This is new. K2, students in grades K2 will receive PE instruction every day to meet the New York State mandate. It is very challenging to be able to meet that mandate, and we're very excited about this. Music ensembles would have a dedicated block of time, which would occur before the school day. We've been working with transportation, and transportation would be available. Feedback from families and teachers and music teachers was because currently the ensembles are during recess, and some students struggle with the choice: do I go to recess? Do I go to chorus? And so this would allow for recess to be protected time. In the next bullet, students no longer have to choose between recess and music. And then one of the pieces that's been built in at some of the buildings, but not all of the buildings, so we've really taken a look at the schedule to try to make this work for all the buildings, is scheduling dedicated time for enrichment teachers to be able to provide consultation at grades K1 and 2. And remember, all of these are draft changes. That's why we're gathering the feedback and taking a look at the impact of these changes. This slide here shows the comparison of the current minutes yearly that each of the grade levels are receiving specials and what it would shift to. So what you see there is for grades K2 for PE going from 3,720 minutes approximately to approximately 5,000 minutes. And music, that would go up to 2,000 minutes. Art would go up to 2,000 minutes. Library would go up. You do see a decrease of 120 minutes in PE grades 3 through 5, and that comes from that shift of going to PE every day for K2 and also increasing the other special areas. That's where there has to be a give somewhere, and there's a little bit of a give there. So the middle school, what are some of the schedule highlights at the middle school? So restructuring of 6th grade programming. So redesigning the sixth grade English Language Arts course to integrate both the New York State ELA and reading standards and the writing standards. This will allow, and this is a piece of feedback that we've heard for a number of years. It's where the Bay Trail schedule, in the current schedule, students struggle to receive intervention and academic support. Sometimes they have to give up a special, or they have to miss something, and this new schedule allows for an academic support period for all students at 6th grade. So math intervention, tier 2 and tier 3, reading intervention for tier 2 and tier 3, enrichment, resource room, individualized academic support, and that would be on a daily basis. And depending on students' needs, they may be scheduled for 2 days of math intervention and 2 days of reading intervention, and then have a day of individualized academic support. It will really be more individualized and specific for students based on their needs. Then we also, so New York State mandates 1.75 credits of CTE courses at middle school, so that's career technical education. And at our middle school, those are courses in technology, business, family and consumer science, And so shifting of those courses, so in sixth grade, students would take 20 weeks of technology, 10 weeks of business, 20 in seventh grade, 20 weeks of family and consumer science, and eighth grade, 20 weeks of technology. This would shift that CTE, the current model, and allow for, in eighth grade, electives and student choice. So students would be able to choose from a business course, a family and consumer science elective, an art elective, a music elective, and we're still working out whether it would be a 10-week course or a 20-week course, but really prepping students for the high school where they do have all of those opportunities to take electives. So again, just to revisit the process, where those bullets are red, that's where we currently are. Again, there's 2 elementary faculty meetings the remainder of this week, and then gathering the feedback through the surveys, making the modifications, and then hoping to present modified schedules during the May faculty meetings, so that if we need to communicate changes to families, we will have time prior to the end of this school year.
Before you do questions, I usually do at the end, but I would just thank the team, the administrators, the teacher leaders. A lot of work went into really listening and making some shifts. The one piece I'll tell you is that if you have a student in high school, middle school, in one of our elementary schools, just the thought of next year to be able to say in the morning, everybody, it's a day 2. It just as a parent is huge, because right now it's a day 2 for you. You're a yellow day and you're a butterfly. So just being able to get there is huge from the parent side of things as a parent, but also that staffing piece. Our NL teachers, our special area teachers, our speech teachers, folks that really need to go amongst buildings and can't right now because of that day rotation. So as we look at like technology, trying to find technology teachers, if anybody's at home now and is a technology teacher and wants to teach technology, please reach out to Dr. Kenny. We have a job for you. To be able to look at and share staff. So for example, a technology teacher being able to work at the high school in the morning and then go to Bay Trail in the afternoon. We've never been able to really do that because of those day rotations are different. And so it's really trying to build a schedule that ultimately is also fiscally responsible because of shared staff as those needs continue. We also, I just would point out, it really is about student need first and what really is best for kids. In Bay Trail, one of those pieces that some of you know is that if your student does need resource room all of a sudden or needs academic services, in the current schedule before COVID, it meant you had to give up a special. So, and we want to be as inclusive as possible, which means nobody should have to give anything up. We should be able to find a way to support you if you need support academically, but also allow you to have those specials like art and music that really sometimes bring kids into school because that's what they love and are near and dear. So usually I save my kudos, but I just want to jump in there. I think I get excited about the schedule shifts, and thank you, Dr. Maloney.
Thank you.
All right, thank you both. Board members, any questions or comments?
I
Lisa.
have a bunch of questions, but we're doing a workshop on this, right?
Yep.
Yeah, okay, I can save them.
Okay.
I just had some specifics around like SEL, but I'm super excited about it.
Yep.
Really excited about it. Thank you.
Board members? So I have a couple of things. First off, you talked about the 30-minute block for elementary school. Is that a block for the entire school at the same time, or is it like by grade level, staggered blocks, shall we say?
So again, this is still in draft. So right now it's all for the entire building, but we're still working it through. So it may shift and move, and trying to find the best spot and gathering the feedback from the stakeholders.
Good. And I would just say that, in addition to what Tom said about how it helps parents, what I really like is that it helps free up time for personal development for the teachers. We know that everything is tight. With short staffing, it really puts a lot of pressure on their potential available time, if this can make that easier for them to do, and especially as a group, like you said, a certain subject matter or certain grade level. I think that's fantastic. And I also look at this as you explain it. I think about when Dr. Putnam came in, you took the elementary schools and tried to get them all aligned. You know, they were all individual schools, but you helped coordinate the curriculum and a lot of those things. And this is just another extension. It may not be aligning the curricula, but it's bringing that alignment and coordination so everything can work together better across the building. So I think it's a very it's changing the system. You can make incremental changes, but the big changes are when you really look at the system and make these fundamental changes. So I think this is a great opportunity here.
Thank you, Mark. And I'll be honest, the idea around having the grade level teachers be able to have that common planning time across the district came from a meeting with teachers at Indian Landing where they said, I really miss being able to collaborate through the pandemic. What I've missed is being able to collaborate with my other 4th, 5th grade teachers to say, how are you teaching this? How are, and to share the resources and share the lessons. And now they can jump on, Microsoft Teams and they know that their colleague in another building is free at the same time, and they can have those conversations and when we need to roll out something, we know that they're free and we can, schedule a time to be able to roll things out or to meet and answer questions.
Well, I went, Barb.
Well, that's exactly what I was going to say. Is it pretty much is a virtual meeting then?
It could be virtual. I mean, with the hour, we could pull it off virtually.
Yeah.
And so it could happen.
Wow.
As frequently as the teachers need it.
Sure. I think that's the amazing part as a retired teacher.
Mm-hmm.
That I would have loved to have something like that.
Yeah, really.
We have a technology opening if you're interested. Oh, yeah.
You'll have more free.
Oh, well, wait a minute.
There's a waiver for the retiree.
That's right. The state just did that waiver, so maybe I might look into that.
So
Always be hiring, Barb.
we look forward to hearing more about it, especially as you finalize your plans and implement it, and also in the upcoming years what the outcomes are for the teachers and for the students.
I would just share that and this is why we want to bring it to the community and the board as we go through it. And as Leslie mentioned several times, it's a draft. And the other piece is that we're rolling it out. Leslie and her team are rolling it out at faculty meetings. Mm-hmm. But faculty meetings are happening at all different times. So there's lots of rumor out there, lots of information, and we want to get through that first and then look at all that feedback. And as Leslie shared, the process as we move towards May in the next faculty meetings to come back to the table. So lots of information, but all good stuff focused on kids and instruction. That concludes superintendent reports.
Thank you, Dr. Putnam. Which brings us to financial items, section 6, approve and adopt the budget. The Board of Education must adopt the budget for presentation to the voters on May 17th, 2022. And we've had these presentations by Dr. Driffel. So may I have a motion and a second that the budget for the 2022-23 school year be submitted to the voters for approval on May 17th, 2022 in the amount of $109,153,415.
So moved. Second.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Any opposed? All right, motion carries. So the next action is to approve approve the property tax report card as presented. Each year prior to the school budget vote, all districts are required to submit a property tax report card to the New York State Education Department. The report card includes information on the proposed school budget, the projected tax levy as well as restricted, unrestricted, and appropriated fund balances. The required report card showing information for the 2021, 2022, and 2022, 2023 years is attached. The property tax report card is due by the next business day after board approval, but no later than April 22nd, 2022. So, be it resolved that the Penfield Central School District Board of Education approve the 2022-23 property tax report card as presented, and be it further resolved that the Assistant Superintendent for Business and Finance is directed to submit the property tax report card to the State Education Department by the end of the next business day following this approval. So may I have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Okay, next is the resolution to approve the architectural engineering services. Whereas the Board of Education of the Penfield Central School District has determined that it is in the best interest of the Penfield Central School District to retain an architect and engineer to provide architectural engineering project management and related professional services in connection with the 2021 capital improvement project. And whereas the Board of Education has determined that it is in the best interest of the school district to continue its professional relationship with the SEI Design Group Architects for the purposes of providing architectural services for the project, and whereas the school district's legal counsel, Ferrara Fiorenza, PC, and SEI have jointly prepared a contract for architectural services for the project, a copy of which has been shared with the board. Therefore, be resolved as follows, that the Board of Education approves the retention of SEI to provide architectural services and proceed with the project in accordance with the terms and conditions of the architectural services contract, and that the Board of Education hereby authorizes the President of the Board, the Superintendent of Schools, or their designees to enter into architectural service contracts on behalf of the Board of Education and take all actions necessary or convenient to proceed under the contract in connection with this project. And upon Board of Education approval, this resolution shall take effect immediately. May I have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Hang on one second.
Oh,
Oh, here we go. All right. It is recommended that the board approve the following donations. Donations totaling $2,066.29 were received to support the technology department at the high school and the music department at Cobbles Elementary, the Penfield Education Foundation, Cobbles Elementary, for $1,546.29, and RIT Technology donation to the high school for $520. May I have a motion and a second that the Board of Education approve the amendment totaling $2,066.29 to the 2021-22 budget as shown above, the amount submitted both as revenue and expenditure items, and express the gratitude to the donors for their generous support for Penfield schools.
So moved. Second.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Policies for first read, and there are a lot of them.
we've been busy.
You've been working hard.
Yes.
Yes, we have.
Yes. So, first read, it's 7612, grouping by similarity of needs. 7615, least restrictive environment. 7616, pre-referral intervention strategies in general education. And then there is a regulation associated with that. 2617, declassification of students with disabilities. 7618, students with disabilities confidentiality, and another regulation, 7620, students with disabilities participating in school district programs, and 7621, Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. And I just will remind the audience that regulations are not policies. They are documents that help implement policies. We vote on the policies. The district develops the regulations to fulfill them. They're just included here for our reference. So, would someone like to speak to those?
Do you want me to speak? I mean, you can speak to those, but
They're pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
They're all up online. The reason that these are in first read is just a reminder that the policy committee from the board is in a 5-year review cycle. So we're nearing the end of that 5-year review cycle. The 8,000 is our last series of policies to go through. Some minor changes. A lot of this was kudos to the policies committee for really cleaning things up. Many of our regulations repeated language in the policy and vice versa. So a lot of this was really cleaning it up, shortening some things, and hitting the heart of the need of the policy.
yeah, right. And then there's some policies listed for deletion because we did some combining of things because there was a lot of repetitiveness and stuff that just really wasn't needed. And kudos also to senior cabinet. They looked at some of the language, and so that's why there's kind of a lot.
Yeah.
So, let me speak, so we talk about the ones for deletion. That's 7610, students with disabilities, district plans, 7613, Board of Education review of committees on special education action and a regulation, and 7612, students with disabilities, provisions for appropriate education, continuing services. And as you said, it's great, sometimes these things run their course where the value isn't there, or they get covered by other.
too.
So I just want to be clear because there are times that a policy might run its course. These are not those. These are deal with students with disabilities, are near and dear obviously to our district heart, but they're not required policies by New York State. So the policies that the board's going to be voting on for deletion is our transparency. They're up online. People can look at them. The language in the policy is either already in another policy we have, or it's required by law and you don't need to have a policy for it. And so an example of that would be, and the policy committee talked about this, is the Board of Education review of Committee on Special Education Action. That is a requirement of the board. You do not need a policy to say that's the role of the board. And so it's really a review, and it's taking it out because it's required by law. So the policy is not required by law, the action is. So I hope that's clarified, but there are definitely times that we might delete a policy because it doesn't fit the need anymore. If we had a policy on typewriters, we might not need that anymore, but in these cases, because students with disabilities obviously is critical to what we do, but again, it's in other policies. So a lot of review on the policy committee. You guys have done a lot of work, and I appreciate the shout out to district office as well as our special ed administrators in the district who've been reviewing all these policies to make sure that the policy and the regulation actually meets the practice of what we do every day. We say we're doing something in our policy, we want to ensure that we're doing it.
That we were doing it.
Yeah.
Right,
Thank you.
Right.
Yeah.
So the other thought I
was-
had is, you want to go ahead?
I was just going to say thank you for clarifying that. Wasn't trying to imply that we have no needs for in these areas.
Absolutely.
I didn't say it very well. Thank you.
I don't know if there's a board liaison for SEPTA, but I was thinking maybe one of us should send them an email, because this might look alarming. Do you want me to do, is that okay
Yeah.
if I do that?
Yeah,
Because I don't,
absolutely.
just to say that we reviewed a bunch and that they're up for first read, and we're looking obviously for comment, but the deletion is not to, change anything, just to clean things up, and so I'll go ahead and do
That'd
that.
be great.
Yeah, and that's appreciated, Lisa, thank you.
Okay. Making a note.
Any more comments on policy? Okay, now that the election is coming up and the...
Did you gotta vote on the deletion?
Oh, we do?
Yeah.
Oh,
if
I'm
you-
sorry, thank you.
That's all right, but it's not obvious. You have to kind of scroll up to see that.
Well, yeah, I did. Okay, so then may I have a motion and a second that the policies 7610, 7613, and that there's regulation, but then, and 7622 be deleted from the district policy manual as submitted, effective immediately.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Now we can talk about approving the chairperson of the election. Board approval of a chairperson of election for the May 17th, 2022 budget vote and election is required. The chairperson of the election is an eligible voter of the Penfield Central School District. And it's recommended that the board approve Megan was it Durite or Doherty? Doherty. Thank you. Doherty, I should know that. As chairperson of the election for the May 17th, 2022 budget vote and election. Motion and a second.
So moved. Second.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. And now it's recommended that we approve the following chief election inspector. The board approval of a chief election inspector for the May 17th, 2022 budget vote and election is required. The chief election inspector is an eligible voter of the Penfield Central School District. And that the board approve Sharon Erkfitz as the chief election inspector for the May 17th, 2022 budget vote and election. May I have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. It is then is recommended the board approve the following inspectors and assistant clerks. The board approval of the election inspectors and assistant clerks for the May 17th, 2022 vote and election is required. All inspectors and assistant clerks are eligible voters of this Penfield Central School District. I'm not going to go through the names. You have the list right there. So may I have a motion and a second that the board approve the individuals named above to serve as election inspectors and assistant clerks for the May 17th, 2022 budget vote and election.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Brings us to visitor speaking time. We as a board appreciate the comments of the community during public session of the board meeting. Every individual that speaks has a vested interest in the education of our students, and your comments are important to us. Matters involving particular individuals or specifics of negotiation are not permitted during public sessions. Concerns raised will be referred to the district administration for follow-up or action when appropriate. Visitors may sign up to speak at a meeting by emailing the district clerk, Sharon Erkfitz, with their name, address, phone number, and topic for which they wish to address. Registration will be open at 8 a.m. on the Friday before the meeting and remain open until 3 p.m. on the Tuesday of the board meeting. Speakers are expected to identify themselves with their name and address before presenting and limit their comments to 3 minutes or less. A total of 30 minutes will be allotted for visitor speaking time, and the board will not be responding to comments during the session, but please be assured that we are listening. And finally, we ask the speakers to model the conduct that we expect from our students in school daily. Please be respectful of others in your words, conduct, and demeanor. Thank you. So we have one person has signed up, Mrs. Dana Marr. Thank you, Ms. Marr. Would you please state your name and address?
Yep, Dana Marr, 1690 Qualtrough Road. So, all right. These past couple of years have brought a number of heated topics, issues of contention and disagreement across the country, with many of these issues particularly related to our schools. There has been an intensity with many of these issues to the point that it seems people are losing sight of the kids in the midst of all the issues. The whole purpose behind school is to provide students with an education and an environment that supports effective learning Kids cannot learn effectively amidst an environment that involves chaos and conflicting messages. We have to remember to be the role models for these kids in demonstrating kindness and respect to one another, regardless of any differences in perspective. They are constantly watching what we do and learning from us. It is so critical that we continue to move forward, that we learn from these past couple of years and do things differently. Our future generation is relying on us to do better. We have an opportunity to demonstrate excellence and for others to look up to us as a shining example that models camaraderie rather than contention. It is vital that we don't let that opportunity pass us by. The school board election is just around the corner. I would like to wish every candidate the very best in the campaign and say thank you for stepping forward and being willing to invest your time and supporting the students in the Penfield School District. So that's it.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Maher.
Thank you.
Next is that the Board of Education meeting schedule for the 2022-2023 school year be approved as listed. You have the schedule before you. Lots of opportunities for us to get together. So may I have a motion and a second that the 2022-2023 Board of Education meeting schedule be approved as listed?
So moved. Second.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
Not opposed.
Committee meetings. First up is the steering committee that was on March 30th, 2022. I was not able to attend because of a work-related issue, but were you
I
able
was
to
there.
attend? Oh, good, thank you.
I was there. And the president's report was the update on Monroe County School Board Association goals. And the transition is taking place with Sherry Johnson doing a warm handoff of the executive director function to Amy Thomas.
Oh.
Oh, you didn't know?
No, that's, oh, wow.
Well, breaking news.
Okay.
No, I think it's already started, actually. So Amy Thomas will be,
Well, then
Yes.
Sherry can retire.
Yes.
All right.
yes. Succession planning and an assessment of the future of the association is being discussed. Officers are looking to RIT and the U of R for technical media support in the form of an intern. And Amy Thomas will conduct a survey of the Monroe County School Boards Association membership while providing historical data. This will guide the future direction of the association. And so Sherry will continue until the end of May and serve in a consultant capacity through June with Amy. So the Sherry's director's report was online if you wanted to
Yeah.
look at it. Gary Bracken thanked myself and Emily for being presenting at the Prospective School Board Candidate Seminar. And I'm just trying to think what else. Oh, and then Treasurer's Report. Sherry presented it because John was absent. John Abbott was absent. It was reported on the expense and revenue budget and was was approved. And then everybody presented, the overview of their information exchange, labor relations, which was very fascinating because we had that presentation on marijuana. So that was interesting about the new laws and how it affects schools. Now Joanne Antonocci presented on the ACT for Education that a segment on civic readiness will be recorded soon. And the emphasis is on students doing their own research and having the student voice heard. There will be videos on the budget process in April and May, and the topic for June is social emotional learning. And then I'm just trying, information exchange, and we've already kind of talked about this before. They had the RMSC present on the 2024 solar eclipse, and the whole impact is just, it's just,
Got a flyer in the mail.
oh, okay.
If you remember the Science Museum, they sent the flyers
All
out
right.
about prepare yourself for 2024.
So there you have the steering committee. Great.
Thank you.
Synopsis.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
The Legislative Committee met on April 6th. The meetings with our legislators was delayed. A number of them had to be postponed because of the budget was still not approved.
Right.
And that, so they're looking to reschedule those, because again, once the budget being approved is one thing, but there still is a legislative session upcoming, right? And, a lot of laws get wrapped into, a lot of legislation gets wrapped into the budget, but that's not exclusively to that time frame. And so we are working on rescheduling that. And in the end, we had a very short meeting because there was talk about the budget, which Dr. Driffel has kind of covered a lot of those points. And then we are working to schedule those meetings. So that's the Monroe County School Board Association meetings. And then the district meetings, there was the DEI Core Committee meeting. Would someone choose to speak about that?
Yeah, so we were updated on our Family and Community Engagement Subcommittee, and I think key takeaways from that was just the importance of making sure that our families feel engaged and empowered, and just the processes that we need to have in our organizational conditions, and that those partnerships all need to start with trust. And I think what we've done as a district, we have a lot of processes and systems in place that has helped us to make a lot of gains already and progress this year. There was an update around the inclusive curriculum and assessment, and they talked about how members really looked through the mirrors and windows and sliding glass door experiences, and just speaking about how we help other stakeholders to understand the importance of inclusive curriculum and instruction. And just that, and they spoke about having an accountability partner, which I thought was really neat, just having someone that you were just being accountable to, so that for what you were doing. And then just some updates around grading for equity, just determining district priorities around grading, and then the goal is to have established grading practices for the fall of 2022. And just looking at feedback from our outside stakeholders.
Thank you. And then next is Meet the Candidates Night. Dr. Driffel had mentioned that this is coming up, so this is a reminder. It will be held virtually on Tuesday, April 26, 2022 at 7 p.m. and it'll be live streamed in the same manner as our Board of Education meetings are. So we look forward to seeing that. That's an opportunity to have the candidates directly answer questions, speak to the community. There's no unfinished business. Is there any new business? So may I have a motion and a second that the meeting be adjourned at 8:06 p.m.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Any opposed? All right, meeting adjourned.